She stood alone at the edge of the stage, the lights so bright they erased the audience into a blur of shadows. From where she was standing, the famous judge's desk looked impossibly far away, like another world she had to cross using nothing but her voice. Her small hands clutched the microphone, not because it was heavy, but because it was the only thing anchoring her to the moment. She was 12 years old, barely tall enough for the mic stand adjusted down to its lowest setting, yet the silence in the theater bent around her as if everyone sensed something rare was about to happen. Backstage, only minutes earlier, she had been sitting on a hard plastic chair, her feet swinging above the floor. Her mother knelt in front of her, smoothing down the sleeves of her simple dress. It wasn't a designer outfit, just something they found on sale, but it was clean and carefully pressed. Her father stood a few steps away, pretending to check his phone while actually fighting the urge to pace. He had seen her sing in the kitchen, in the living room, in the tiny bedroom they shared during hard times. He had heard this song 100 times. Still, he felt like he was about to hear it for the very first time. Her name echoed through the hallway when a stage assistant called it. She stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. For a second, she froze, eyes wide, as if realizing too late what she had signed up for. Her mother squeezed her shoulders and whispered, "Just sing it like you do at home." Her father leaned down and kissed the top of her head. "No matter what happens," he said softly, "we're already proud." Now, under the lights, she took a slow breath, the kind her vocal coach taught her, filling her lungs all the way down to her stomach. Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly, arms crossed, his expression neutral but attentive. He had heard thousands of auditions, original songs included, many from people far older and more experienced than the girl standing before him. He expected nerves, maybe a sweet voice, maybe something forgettable. He did not expect what was about to happen. "So," Simon said, breaking the silence, "tell us your name." She answered clearly, though her voice trembled just a little. She introduced herself, said she was 12, and explained that she came from a small town where music wasn't something people took seriously as a career. It was just something you did at home, after school, when homework was finished. How did she start writing songs? One of the judges asked. She shrugged shyly and said that sometimes feelings were too big to talk about, so she wrote them down instead. "And what will you be singing for us today?" Simon asked. "It's an original song," she said. A quiet ripple went through the audience. Original songs were always risky. "I wrote it myself." Simon raised an eyebrow. "At 12, she nodded. "Yes, sir. What's it about?" Another judge asked gently. She swallowed, gripping the microphone tighter. "It's about feeling invisible, and hoping that one day someone really hears you." For just a second, Simon's expression changed. It wasn't dramatic, just a tiny softening around the eyes, as if something about that answer reached him. "All right," he said. "Whenever you're ready." The music began softly, just a simple piano track, almost bare. No dramatic build-up, no tricks. The first note left her mouth, and something in the room shifted. It wasn't just that her voice was good. It was clear, controlled, with a tone that carried both innocence and an ache far older than her years. People in the audience leaned forward without realizing they were doing it. She sang about sitting at the back of the classroom, raising her hand but never being called on. About watching louder voices take up all the space while hers stayed trapped in her chest. The lyrics were simple, but they were honest, and honesty has a way of cutting straight through skepticism. Her voice didn't try to show off. It told a story. Simon's posture changed almost immediately. His arms uncrossed. He sat up straighter. He wasn't looking at his notes or the audience or the other judges. He was watching her, completely focused, like a man who suddenly realized he might be witnessing something rare. As the song continued, the lyrics grew deeper. She sang about nights when she lay awake, wondering if her dreams were too big for someone like her. About hearing people say, "Be realistic," and, "That's not for kids like you." Her voice cracked just slightly on one line, not enough to ruin the performance, just enough to make it real. A few audience members wiped their eyes. Backstage, her mother clasped her hands together, tears already streaming down her face. She had lived every word of that song with her daughter. She remembered the nights her child came home quiet, saying she was fine, then writing furiously in her notebook until sleep finally took over. She remembered the teachers who praised her talent but suggested safer dreams. She remembered wondering if encouraging this musical passion was selfish or cruel in a world that could be so unforgiving. On stage, the girl reached the chorus, and the melody lifted slightly, not louder, but stronger. She sang about being heard, about finding her voice even if her hands shook while using it. There was no choreography, no movement, just a small figure standing still, pouring something deeply personal into the air. Simon felt a familiar but rare sensation, surprise mixed with admiration. He had built his career on spotting talent, but moments like this still caught him off guard. This wasn't polished in a commercial sense. It wasn't trying to be trendy. It was genuine, and that was far more powerful. When she reached the final verse, her confidence grew. Her shoulders straightened. Her eyes lifted from the floor and looked out into the audience, then briefly toward the judges. It was as if she finally believed, even for just these few minutes, that she deserved to be heard. The last note hung in the air, fragile and pure. The piano faded. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence. No cheers, no clapping, just stillness. The kind of stillness that means everyone is processing something they didn't expect to feel. Then the audience erupted. Applause thundered through the theater, mixed with cheers and a few sobs. People stood to their feet almost instinctively. The judges looked at one another, clearly moved. One of them pressed a hand to her chest, shaking her head in disbelief. The girl stood frozen, eyes wide, as if she wasn't sure whether the reaction was real. Her hands trembled now, not from fear, but from the sudden release of everything she'd been holding in. Simon didn't clap right away. He stared at her, his face unreadable, and for a split second, she worried she'd done something wrong. Then he smiled, not his usual half-smirk, but a genuine, warm smile. He picked up his microphone. "I'm going to be honest with you," he said, and the room quieted instantly. "I did not expect that. At all." She nodded, unsure how to respond. "Writing an original song is hard," Simon continued. "Writing a good original song is even harder. Writing one at 12 years old that feels authentic, emotional, and controlled. That's incredibly rare." Her eyes filled with tears. "What impressed me the most," he said, "wasn't just your voice. It was your bravery. You stood here and told us exactly how you feel, without hiding behind anything. That takes courage. A lot of adults never learn how to do that." The other judges chimed in, praising her songwriting, her tone, her presence. One said the song felt like a diary entry turned into music. Another said she had a way of making people listen without trying to force it. Simon leaned forward again. "You know," he said, "there are singers who come on this stage with huge voices, big runs, all the tricks. And that can be impressive. But what you did was make us feel something. And that, to me, is far more important." The girl nodded again, tears spilling over now. She wiped them away quickly, embarrassed, then laughed softly when the audience cheered in response. "So," Simon said, pausing just long enough to build the tension, "for me, this is a very easy yes." He pressed the button. The giant X did not appear. Instead, the word yes lit up, followed by 3 more yeses from the other judges. Confetti didn't fall. There was no golden buzzer moment. But somehow, it felt just as powerful. The girl covered her mouth with both hands, overwhelmed. She whispered, "Thank you," over and over again, barely audible over the applause. As she walked off the stage, her legs felt weak, like she might collapse at any second. Backstage, her mother ran to her, pulling her into a tight hug. Her father joined them, laughing and crying at the same time. "You did it," he kept saying. "You really did it." But even as the excitement swirled around her, the girl felt something deeper than happiness. She felt seen. For the first time, it wasn't just her parents or a few friends who had listened to her songs. It was a room full of strangers. It was Simon Cowell. It was millions of people who would eventually watch this moment and maybe recognize themselves in her words. Later that night, after the lights dimmed and the adrenaline faded, she sat in the quiet of their hotel room, her notebook open on her lap. The pages were filled with crossed-out lines, half-finished verses, scribbled thoughts. She picked up her pen and wrote a new line at the top of a blank page. "Today, they heard me. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know how far she would go in the competition. She didn't know if fame would come or fade. But she knew this. No one could ever tell her again that her voice didn't matter. And somewhere across the city, Simon Cowell replayed the audition in his mind. He had judged countless performers, watched dreams soar and shatter. But every once in a while, someone reminded him why he still sat behind that desk. A 12-year-old girl with an original song and the courage to sing it. She hadn't just stunned him. She had reminded him that sometimes, the smallest voices carry the biggest truths.